I'm Mary Kennedy. I'm the founder of Biotech Networks. Wanted to mention that you can, on the right side of this stage here, you can click on the discussion, and we have 2 new comments. Oh, someone said, thanks for organizing. This is also where you can put questions for Dr. Adams, and we will address them at the end of her presentation. So without further ado, Dr. Angelique Adams is an engineer with 25 years of industry experience, most recently serving as Chief Innovation Officer at multi-billion-dollar steelmaker Aperam. Following the publication of her first book on women in STEM, she became an entrepreneur. She is now an author, speaker, and executive coach focusing on leadership development for diverse STEM professionals. And welcome, Dr. Adams, and take it away. I'll be in the background.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary, and thank you all for joining me today. So let me make first test. Let's share my screen and make sure that you can see it. Okay, so today's talk is about how to get your dream career in STEM. So the first thing I'd like to do is I would want you to take just a couple of minutes to really think about what that means for you. If you think 5, 10, 15 years from now, what will your dream career be like? Now, if you're anything like me and people that I have had a chance to work with, there's a couple of common themes. I want to be respected for my work. I wanted to be paid what I'm worth. And I want to do all of those things without feeling like I have to sacrifice the people that I care about or the projects that I care about. And so that is for me what a dream career has meant and what it is and what it continues to be for me. And so I want you to really picture in your mind what a dream career is for you. Now, my next question is, do you know how to get there? Do you know the steps that you need to take to go from where you are today to getting to that dream? And if your answer is no, I want you to know that you are not alone. In fact, a large global talent consultancy has done some research and published that, at least half of people don't feel like they have help to navigate their career. They're not sure how to get from point A to point B. And when you think about a career in STEM, the numbers get even higher. Even more people don't really know how to get there. And I can understand why. I mean, if you're inside an organization, frankly, organizations are not great at helping people lay out a career path, even making it clear what your different options are, and then helping people take those steps. And oftentimes, any organizations that do anything, they tend to focus on a few people, what they consider to be their top talent, using whatever criteria they have. And they focus all of their development resources and their training resources on those few people. So if you don't happen to have been chosen as one of those people, then really you're left to your own devices. And then on the other hand, there's lots of people out there who say that they can help you. There's people who will help you with your resume. There's people that will help you with your personal branding. There's people that will help you with your executive presence and many other things. And there's a lot of good information out there. But those activities are not focused on the most important things that you need to do to really get to that dream career. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to focus on the 3 insider strategies that will help you get from where you are today to where you want to be. So one of the things I really like about these 3 strategies is that they work for you no matter where you are in your career. If you're just starting out, if you learn these 3 strategies early on in your career, you're going to find that your career trajectory goes up pretty quickly. If you are in mid-career and maybe kind of feeling like you're a little bit stuck, you're going to find that at least one of these 3 things is probably sub-optimized. And once you kind of fix that broken link, things are going to move quickly for you. And if you're in a leadership role, you are going to find that these 3 steps are a must-do. They're no longer things that are optional. You can no longer get by just sort of doing things on your own. You really have to implement these 3 steps. So first of all, I know many of you are on your lunch break, so I want to just thank you in advance for your attention and let you know that I'm really hoping to make this worth your while. I'll do everything I can to make this time worth your while. And then if you stay till the end, I do have some tools that I'm going to give you to help you implement these 3 steps very quickly. Now, before I jump into the 3 steps, I want to tell you just a little bit more about me, hopefully getting to know a little bit more about me and my own career trajectory and what I'm doing now. You'll feel like I'm qualified to tell you about these 3 steps. So first of all, I'm married. I have 2 children. I have a 14-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. We live in East Tennessee. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, really close to Oak Ridge National Lab, which is where my husband works. He also is a PhD engineer. My STEM career started in chemical engineering as an intern. In undergrad, I did some work in the oil and gas industry for a company called Texaco that I don't even think exists anymore. I think it's Chevron. And I just happened, when I was about ready to graduate, I happened to be at a networking dinner and sat next to a gentleman from a company called Alcoa, which is an aluminum company. And we were chatting and I was telling him about my undergraduate research. And he said, you know, we are really interested in the topic that you're working on. Would you be willing to go to graduate school and then come work in our R&D center? And so I said, yeah, absolutely. So I did that and was very fortunate to get my PhD sponsored by Alcoa. Then I went to work in their research center. And pretty early on, I raised my hand and said, I'm interested in becoming a manager. And at the time, that was really the way to get promoted into the higher ranks, was by going into management. So I had a very small team of 3 people and a budget of $500,000. And that was really when I got the bug for leadership. I thought, wow, you know, this is really something that I enjoy, helping other people to achieve results that they didn't think were possible, to achieve results as a team that they couldn't do on their own, and then also helping people progress through their careers. And so I decided to stay in management. My teams got bigger and bigger, and my budgets got bigger and bigger, and I became a director at Alcoa. And then at about 15 years into my career, I started to get a little bit restless. I had been working primarily on process improvements, like improving energy efficiency in the aluminum production process, reducing the environmental footprint of the aluminum production process. But I really wanted to work on products. And so I decided to go back to school again to MIT and get an executive MBA and really, learn from world-renowned thought leaders on innovation. Now, one of the interesting things about MIT is that when you spend any time at MIT, like, the creativity is just through the roof. And so many of my classmates decided to go into entrepreneurship. I actually thought at the time that was a crazy thing to do. Why would you give up a steady job to go into entrepreneurship? But I decided that I wanted to write a book. And so I started a global research project to collect stories from women in male-dominated industries, all different industries, STEM, finance, the military, you name it. And from that sort of rich database of stories, I wrote my first book, which is for women in STEM. Now, I also happened to get a executive recruiter tapped me on the shoulder and offered me my dream job, which was chief innovation officer at a company that was really focused on product development. So I moved to France and became chief innovation officer at Aperam. And I did that for just over 2.5 years. But my book actually did much better than I had ever expected. And so that was when I got the bug to be an entrepreneur. So I used the publication of the book to launch my new career, which is somebody who does what I'm doing now. I speak, I'm an author, and I do executive coaching, primarily focused on professionals in STEM. I also do a lot of work in my local community. I serve on the board of 3 nonprofits. So I share all of that with you to say, okay, I'm going to be telling you about the strategies that I used in my own career and the strategies that I learned from many of the STEM leaders that I interviewed in my books, as well as what I'm learning and both teaching as I'm working with executives in STEM and tech founders. So the first strategy is prove your performance. And what do I mean by that? All organizations have some critical results that they are focused on. And your job is to prove that you can deliver on those results. Now, it doesn't matter if you're in industry or if you're in academia or a nonprofit or even working for a national lab. All of these organizations have results that they are focused on, that they care about, and your number one job is to prove that you can help them deliver those results. So how do you do that? So the first thing you need to do is you need to do some detective work to actually figure out what those important results are. And the best way to do that is to really look at what the leadership in those organizations are writing about and talking about. So sources for that information are things like the annual reports, things like press releases, job descriptions can help you with some of that, but I don't actually think that's sufficient. So you need to really do some detective work and figure out what those results are. They're probably going to be things like revenue, things like maybe cost reduction, maybe your time to market on new products, maybe it's patents, number of patents, or maybe it's number of publications in high impact journals. I mean, these are some of the types of results that organizations are focused on. I can tell you what is not something that people focus on. It's not, how much work that you're doing, even if you're taking on the workload of others. It's not necessarily how many committees you serve on, things like that. So it's really your job to hone in on those core results. Then you have to demonstrate that you can achieve those results. And so the phrase I really want you to focus on is, I achieved blank, whatever that result is, by doing whatever the activities were. And when you think of that phrase, this is going to help you structure your communication plan. So you can use this phrase in your resume. So you can take off the word I and just say achieved whatever the results are by doing whatever. You can use this in your interviews. I mean, some typical interview questions are, tell me about a significant accomplishment. And you're going to say, I achieved whatever it is by doing whatever the activities are. It's also going to work in your performance review. So you're going to put in all the HR stuff and fill in all the databases that they ask you to for your objectives. And then when you go into your performance review, you're just going to have a couple of bulleted points with this statement that summarizes what you achieved and how you did it. And the other thing about this statement and the way it's structured is this will help you do the dreaded thing, and they've been talking a lot about this on LinkedIn, even just in the past week or two, bragging about yourself. So you have to brag about yourself. And the reason you have to do that is because organizations, managers, we do not pay close enough attention to anybody to know what they're achieving on any given time, or to put it in our memories and keep it long enough to be able to recall it in the right time. So you have to constantly be reminding us of what you're working on. But yes, it can feel weird to do that. And I'm sure all of us have been in the room where there's been somebody who was just droning on and on about something that they did. And, you're just like, I really wish this person would be quiet. But the way to do that is by using this phrase. And so let me just give you an example from my own life. So earlier this year, I was working with the local Girls Inc. nonprofit, and I was helping them do their 3-year strategy. And so we're going through all the different things that they want to focus on, and I'm working with their board of directors to help them lay out their plan. And one of the things that they said they really wanted to focus on was volunteers. They said, we really need more volunteers, and we need a way to manage volunteers. So I said, Oh, by the way, I used to work at the Boys and Girls Clubs, and I put in a volunteer management program, and we got a 300% increase in the number of volunteers we had. Happy to chat with you about that anytime. Now, I said I achieved the 300% increase in volunteers, by doing this volunteer management program. That was not bragging. That was giving them actually really useful information about what I can do and how I might be able to help them to achieve something that they want to achieve. And so that is how you do the bragging about yourself. Is one, you make sure it's in the right context. You talk about those achievements when they're relevant, and you do it in a very succinct and clear way. And then, if people want to ask you more about it, by all means, they will. And then you can dig into the details and talk about the long story or whatever. But by just focusing on this phrase, I achieved whatever the result is by doing, this summary set of actions, that provides you the platform to prove to any of this potential stakeholders that you interact with that you can achieve the results that they care about. The second strategy is to nurture your network. So especially as you go from entry-level jobs to manager roles, or even higher level leadership, or if you're even wanting to break into a new organization, you need to understand that hiring and promotion decisions are not the sole purview of just one person. It's not just the hiring manager. And it's often not just your resume or whatever, your performance review documents that are being discussed. You are being evaluated by a group of people, large or small, who need to know who you are and like and trust you. So you need to build a network of people who could influence your career. So how do you do that? So I'll talk maybe about two different use cases. If you're already inside of an organization and you want to get promoted, then you need to really think about, okay, who are my manager's peers? And do they know who I am? Would they be able to pick me out of a lineup? Would they be able to say a couple of statements about my work? If the answer is no, then you need to start reaching out to those people immediately. And the way that you can start to build authentic relationships with people is really by asking them for help, not necessarily help me get promoted or help me get in, be seen well with leaders, but truly saying, I've observed something about you, either a skill or maybe their team did something well, and say, I've observed this about you. I think it would be really helpful. I'm really interested in learning more about this. Can we meet? And if you start doing that, you will be able to have initial contact with people. And then, if you do a good job in the meeting, and by that I just mean you present yourself well, talk a little bit about what you're interested in, make sure that you are very considerate of their time, keep the meeting to the time that was agreed to, and follow up with a thank you and maybe some useful information for them. If you do that, you will start to build authentic relationships. And so when the time comes, they'll be able to vouch for you in those discussions. Now, if you're looking to get into an organization, a similar approach, you need to see if you have anybody in your network, in your alumni network, or something else that you can tap into to potentially get a referral, to start to build relationships with people. And again, I think the phrase that you need to think about is, I'm eager to learn from you. Can we meet? Now, one thing about this, I know, if you're introverted like I am, this can seem very intimidating. A couple of things I will tell you. So first of all, people send me notes like this all of the time, and I have never said no, unless it's obvious they're trying to sell me something. And the people that I've interviewed for my books have all said the same thing. They say, we want to help people as long as we know what they want and feel like we can actually help them, and they're respectful of my time, I'm absolutely willing to help people, learn from me, make introductions, things like that. And the other thing is that you can start doing this by focusing on your activity. So focus on the number of people that you can contact on a given week or whatever your goals are, and focus less on whether or not they say yes or no. Not everybody's going to say yes. I mean, that's just the way life is. But I think you're going to be surprised at how many people do. And once you get into a rhythm of doing this, you're going to find that it's much easier. But I can tell you that, as somebody who's been in the room many times for hiring decisions, promotion decisions, it can be very eye-opening if you haven't been in those meetings to realize how much just somebody's offhand comment about, oh yeah, I know that person. I've talked with that person. I would agree that they show a lot of initiative. How much that can set you apart from others who just have their resume information. So this is something that you really want to focus on, is making sure that you're building out your network, and you can do that by asking for help. Let's see. Okay. The third strategy is to master your mindset. So this is really the linchpin. It's a big topic, but we're gonna hone in on a few things. But the people that are really successful over their careers are the people who, first of all, have their end goal in mind, know what their dream career looks like, and are resilient to obstacles. And I'm sure that all of you on this webinar have had adversities already in your career, whether they be in your studies or whether they be, at work. And so I don't know how you've handled them, if you feel like you've handled them well, or if you feel like you're struggling, but I mean, those things are not going to go away, and challenges will persist. And so mastering your mindset is going to be something that you're going to need to do throughout your entire career. And one aspect of that I think is especially important is really understanding when you're at your best and when you're not. And so I have a little story. I always kind of save this one to one of the last stories I tell, because it's kind of embarrassing. But I'm going to tell you about a time when I did not know what to do when I was not at my best. So as I mentioned, I went to MIT. And one of the great things about that program, that executive MBA program, is that you get an executive coach to help you. And so what they do is you send feedback out to all of the stakeholders, your managers, and maybe even several levels up, your direct reports, your customers, clients, etc. They get to fill in anonymous feedback, and then you get all that back. You get an assessment that talks about your leadership strengths and your leadership opportunities. And you can use that as a guide to work with your executive coach. And so I got mine back. Of course, there were a lot of good things. You don't get into a program like that without a lot of strengths. But it wasn't perfect. So, I wasn't expecting that. But there was one comment on my assessment that really stuck out. And somebody who I work with on a regular basis decided under anonymity to say, Angelique needs to stop acting like a petulant child. So I was really mortified and embarrassed. I mean, here I am. I already have a little bit of imposter syndrome because, I'm in this very prestigious program. I'm sitting here talking to a very experienced executive coach, and I'm in my 40s, and somebody that I work with says that I behave like a petulant child. But my coach, she was, she's seen lots of things. And so she just said, look, this is your coaching session. There's a lot of data here. We don't have to address this at all, or we can focus on it later, whatever you want to do. And so I said, you know what? I know who wrote that. He has it in for me. He doesn't like me. I don't think there's any merit to it. And I just let it go. And so then I, had a couple more sessions with her. And I said, you know what? Now that I've reflected on this and I've calmed down, I think there might be something to this. And I'll tell you why. I said that there have been several meetings that I've been in where I would just get so frustrated that I would erupt and I would roll my eyes or huff or some other sort of like outward emotion that I would do. And I said, I think that might be the case. I think that might be what this person's talking about, is me like rolling my eyes in a meeting. And of course, I didn't realize until, now a couple years later, and I have a 12-year-old daughter who sits across from me at dinner and rolls her eyes. And I realized just how like unprofessional that actually looks. But that was the situation I was in. And my executive coach just said, okay, so it sounds like you get frustrated. And when you're not at your best, you have these behaviors that you don't like. And so I said, yes, that's true. So she said, well, let's work on that then. So what we did is she said, spend a couple of weeks just observing when you really feel like you're at your best and when you feel like you're frustrated or you have anxiety or something else is going on. And just jot those things down. Just jot down where you are, who you're with, what you're doing, those sorts of things. So I did, and we came up with this really interesting list. In my case, I really like working with people who are proactive. I love people who show up on time. I like people who really give credit where credit is due and make sure that they especially are appreciative maybe of more junior people. So that's kind of when I was in my peak performance. And then there's this list of other people. I don't like people that complain. I don't like people that really sort of brag. I don't like people, that I don't like to be in situations where maybe like there's a lot of unstructured social conversations. Like I'm great in sort of conferences, but not so good at like cocktail parties where I don't know what to say. So we made this list, and then she said, okay, so now let's talk about what are you going to do when you're in those situations when you are not at your best. And then all we did was brainstorm a few strategies. And in my case, all I have to do is sort of take a couple of deep breaths, maybe think of, in the case of sort of like these social situations, maybe think of a few things that I might say to people as I'm introducing myself. And I found that I was much better able to manage those frustrating situations because I had thought in advance of a strategy. And the good thing about that is that when you spend less time frustrated and spend less energy worrying about all of those things, that's what frees up energy for you to focus on all of those important people and important projects that you care about. So starting with self-awareness, now there's other things you can do about overcoming obstacles, but starting with self-awareness and really thinking about, okay, when I can't be at my best, what is my strategy, will really help you to start to master your mindset. Now, I will say in particular, if you are a leader and you have a team of people, I think this is especially important because when you're not at your best and you're frustrated, if you're a leader, your emotions are magnified and amplified many times over. And so you really need to understand what those situations are, especially if there might be people in your team who are part of the source of the issue. Then you may be inadvertently sending them what they may be feeling is extremely negative signals. And I'll tell you, I had that be the case for myself. I was working with one of my top engineers, and I was really struggling with just interacting with him. And his boss came to me, my direct report, and said, Bob is really concerned about, he thinks you don't like him, and he's concerned about interacting with you. And, what, can you talk a little bit about what the problem might be? And then I thought, okay. And I actually went back to my list that I had made, a year earlier. And I was like, you know what? Yes. So turns out Bob is a complainer. Anytime I would bring something new to him for brainstorming or something new to implement, he would immediately start complaining, not offering any kind of solutions. And I just struggled with that. So then I thought, okay, well, what can be this person is very knowledgeable. This person is extremely valuable to the team. And he's in his mid 50s. So it's not like I'm going to change this behavior, but I have to find a way to work with him such that I can get what I need done. And I don't send him this really amplified signal that he's not, appreciated in the team. And really, all I did was say, okay, every time he says, the first couple words into his complaint, I'm just going to take a deep breath. And then I'm going to say, well, I hear your concern and we're going to move forward anyway. And that was it. I mean, all he really needed was to be heard. All I needed was to just get through so where I could listen to him. And once we did that, we ended up doing some amazing innovation projects together. So just to hone in on mastering your mindset for your own career is critically important. When you are a leader, it becomes even more important because the way that you are interpreting your obstacles oftentimes gets shown to your team, even if you don't realize it. Okay, so those are the 3 strategies. The first is to prove your performance, figure out what the critical results are, and show how you can deliver on those results. The key phrase I want you to think about is, I achieved blank by doing blank. The second thing is to nurture your network. Recognize that it's more than just one person who's making the decisions about promotions, about hiring. And so the more people that know, like, and trust you, the more likely you are to get those people to influence decisions in the way that you want them to. And so the phrase that you need to be thinking about as you're reaching out to people to build authentic relationships is, I'm eager to learn from you. Can we meet? And the third is to master your mindset. So really be focused on, to start, how can you overcome obstacles? Can you be thinking about, when I can't be at my best, what strategy can you have? What is your rescue plan for getting through some tough challenges so that you can focus your energies on being at your peak performance? So now I'd like to talk a little bit about how you can implement these 3 steps quickly. So one of the things that I've done, as I mentioned, I work with a lot of folks on these topics, and I have a big digital library of a lot of different information, courses, videos, and etc. I pulled out 3 that I'm going to give you that I think are really going to help you implement these 3 strategies. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time now telling you about each of those resources, and then I'll open it up for questions. So the first resource is your accomplishment inventory. So what this is, it'll be a little bit of a brainstorming exercise to help you think again about what are some of the results and accomplishments that you might need to be thinking about so that you can communicate those in the situations you need to. Then it is going to, once you've done some brainstorming, it's going to give you a matrix so that you can start to build a database. The description, again, using that phrasing that I talked about, it's going to talk a little bit about some success metrics. So how are you going to actually talk about how you quantified that result? Then it's going to give you some ideas about, so how can you maybe talk about why that accomplishment might be important to your organization or someone else? And then the last thing that it's going to prompt you for is to talk about why that accomplishment is important to you. And I will tell you that one of the things I'm really seeing, in particularly my recruiting and hiring manager friends who are on LinkedIn, I'm seeing a lot of people saying, gosh, we're seeing so many resumes and we're talking to so many people and it's all the same. We're really looking for people with heart. We're really looking for people who are multidimensional. And so that's why I add this last column about why this accomplishment is important to you. Because if you are able to actually talk a little bit about that as you're communicating these accomplishments, but why was it meaningful for you? Why do you think it's important? That's actually going to set you apart from many of the other people who are interviewing and looking for these promotions. So first of all, most people don't even actually talk about the quantified results. So you're already going to be light years ahead. But the second piece is really making sure that they see the whole you. And you can do that by talking about why things are important to you. And then the other thing that I have in this worksheet, I have a couple of examples of my own experience. You can just see how I use this inventory. So that's the first tool. The second tool I have in the area of nurturing your network is I just have a bunch of scripts. So for various scenarios. So if you want to reach out to somebody that you already know and you want to kind of build this relationship, so maybe it's somebody in your organization, but you just don't know them well, then I have a script for that. If you want somebody to make a referral for you and say, hey, I'm really interested in meeting this person, do you mind doing an email introduction? I have a script for that. I have a little synopsis about how to run the meeting so that it's effective, and then how to do follow-up. So you can just literally copy and paste these scripts, stick them in an email, and you can send as many emails as you want without really having to sort of worry about exactly what to say. So these are all ones that I use myself, and that makes it, I think, fairly easy. And then the last tool that I have for you is what I call the user's manual. So this is the step-by-step process that I did with my own executive coach. I think there's 7 steps. It is going to do some brainstorming, prompt you to do some brainstorming about what are the scenarios, the situations and people that you enjoy being around, the situations and people that I call them dread, but you dread being around, really thinking through what those are. And then thinking about your rescue plan. What are the strategies that you are going to actually take in order to overcome these situations when they might happen? It also prompts you to actually go out and field test the strategies and try them out, and then maybe come back and do some adjustments. So I've also got a list of a few strategies, again, the ones that I use myself. Things like blocking out some time for relaxation, maybe identifying a mantra that you can use if you find yourself in one of these situations where you're not at your best, inviting other people to join you in these discussions, so that if there's a certain person, and I think we all sometimes have to work with that one person that just really grates on our nerves, maybe you can bring somebody else to be with you to sort of act as a buffer. So there's several different strategies that you can take. And so with that, I am going to just summarize the 3 strategies again. Improving your performance, nurturing your network, mastering your mindset. As I said, I have 3 resources here that, if you just spend a couple of hours working through each of these worksheets, then you're going to be very well on your way to implementing all of these strategies, and you're going to be using them again and again and again throughout your career. So you can either get that from my website, which is angeliqueadams.biz/3careersteps, or you can just take a picture of that QR code. And then the other thing I recommend, if this was interesting to you, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I talk about these topics on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, so you can keep up to date with my current thinking and any kind of new ideas or new resources that I might have for you. So with that, I will open it for questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adams. That was great. So the first question we have is, can you speak about showing an interest in the application, process, or product while not inquiring about technology that is being protected under intellectual property?
So if I'm understanding the question, this is about maybe in the nurturing your network part, where I'm suggesting that you go and ask people for reach out to people to develop relationships with them. I think that might be the frame of the question. And I think absolutely you can just simply say, I'm really interested in learning more about this, and I understand that I'm interested in whatever you can share with me. And I think that once you kind of set that framework, the people understand that, and people already know that they're not going to share anything proprietary. Is that the way you understand that question?
That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's always tough. And speaking about the networking, I've always found that offering to take someone for coffee or lunch is it's hard for scientists to turn that down because we all went through grad school. And I think that I get the most out of your third point, the mastering your mindset,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm a woman of a certain age, and it's the I'm sure any of you that have faced some of these issues when you're underrepresented, it's really hard to not take that to heart into an interview. And so I think you did a really great job of having an example and then also saying how you got around it. But one of the questions that I had is how do you make yourself vulnerable and choose the right example? And I don't know if there's out of 5 examples you'd only share one, because for me it just makes me really afraid to talk about my weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to for sure. I think when it comes to weaknesses, I actually treat kind of that question the same way I treat that with the other questions, which is that I tend to give a pretty concise answer in the beginning. I mean, so my weakness is blank because and because of blank, and here's how it has shown up in my in my career, and then really sort of leave it there. I do try to be authentic in the weaknesses that I talk about. I mean, I do think, that I've done different leadership assessments. I've done other sorts of, I've gotten feedback and performance reviews about weaknesses that I have. And so I tend to just pick one of those. But something that I feel like is something that I can work on, right? Or that I am truly working on to improve. I do think that in some cases, particularly performance reviews, sometimes the feedback is not really very good. And so I do always also caution people to take negative feedback and performance reviews with a little bit of a buffer. And really, if you're getting something that you feel is hurtful, be very try your best to be insistent that they give you some examples about what they actually mean, and maybe some examples of what would be behaviors that they think would be in a better direction. Because I've met so many people who will just get, somebody will just throw them a zinger and then they're crushed for years, and myself included. I mean, that has happened to me also. So
yeah, I think that's great advice. And a lot of STEM companies haven't done a lot in the way of emotional intelligence and people really understanding. And I think, this new generation that's talking about work-life balance and, not staying at a job that you're happy at, they're going to do a lot for that. So we have 2 questions right now. Feel free to add them to the discussion on the right. So any suggestions for how to interview or select a career coach or executive coach? and how to tell if it is likely a good fit?
Yes. So a couple of things. So I think that first of all, it's important to understand that there are a couple different types of coaches. So if you want kind of a career, depending on where you are in your career. So if you're in early to mid stage, I would really look for someone who has gotten the results that you're trying to get, has been in some of those roles, or can clearly demonstrate that they have gotten the kinds of results that you're looking for other people. Because I do think there's a lot of, I think coaching is somewhat of a it's a hot topic. It's a hot place to be right now, and a lot of people, particularly as things went remote, a lot of people decided they wanted to become coaches. But if they can't actually help you by either having walked the path that you think you're going to be on, or can clearly demonstrate that they have helped other people through solid testimonials, that's the first thing. In terms of building a rapport with people, I think that if they have videos or if they've written things, I would read their materials, consume some of their content to see if their really core communication style and their core approach resonates with you, and then absolutely get on the phone with them. So and do a discovery call or something like that with them, just to make sure that, okay, yeah, this person seems to get me, I like what they're saying. So absolutely, any coach that's not willing to really talk to you for at least 30 minutes would be a red flag for me in my own way that I would approach that. Now, if you're further along in your career, then I do think it's important to really look for people who are executive coaches, who have at least some coaching training, and who have experience with executive coaching, because that is an additional set of skills, additional set of training. The mindset piece becomes, I think, a lot bigger on that side, and also the working with teams and how to manage your team, and the leadership side of things also comes into play the higher you get up, you get in your career. So you need to make sure that you find people who have either experience because they've been executive coaches for a long time, or who have personally have a career path that have led people.
Okay, thanks. So you're saying if you're an introvert, you should stick with someone who's, just maybe an extreme example, you shouldn't pick someone who's extroverted and unlike you, even though they might have complementary.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean, certainly I think if you get on a call with them and they're just like in your face and you feel intimidated, I mean, you should trust your gut. But I'm thinking a little bit more about like your values.
Okay.
Really, if you consume people's content and talk with them, you can learn about, okay, for example, if you really want to go fast and focus on focus on getting up the ladder as quickly as you can, and maybe don't care about work-life balance, that's a different way to get there than maybe somebody who has a family and is struggling with managing work-life balance and those sorts of things. So, and also, I will say that if you are somebody from an underrepresented group, I get so many people who say, I get to a certain point with a mentor or a coach, and then they just don't get it. So just be aware that can happen. And so maybe you want to look for somebody who might be more of, might have more similarities with you from your own background.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. We've got 2 more questions. Can you give more tips about nurturing your network without feeling bad or guilty about using a person?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, what you're focused on, what I recommend you focus on, is actually building a relationship with people, which means that you are hoping that they can help you with something, and you are open and willing and looking for ways to help them. And that's how you get kind of maybe over this feeling of, because yes, it can feel calculating. And it's actually funny because I'm currently working on a book about women in college athletics, and there's a woman conference commissioner out in the West Coast who had every conference commissioner's name like on a spreadsheet, and she had mapped out how she was when she was going to meet them, and have interactions with them, and all of those things. And that maybe on its surface seems like really cold and calculating, but she built relationships with every single one of these people. She offered to help them. She made introductions. She did whatever she could to help them. So yes, I thought about who I wanted to meet because I understood that those people would help me in my career. But once you have that first interaction, now it's about treating them like a friend, a mentor, a colleague, whatever, just as you would anyone else. So that's really the way I think to get over this sense of, yeah, I'm being really calculating about trying to meet these people, because it's what you do after that initial meeting that counts in building the relationship, and that's the authenticity part, that you will bring to the relationship.
Thank you. And I think those of us that are older, we've all been there, and so we have empathy for people. And I love to hear things from people just starting their careers. It's very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the last question that we have is, with interviews being virtual now, how can you determine if the company is a great fit?
It's a really good question. I think that there's a couple of ways that you can do that. So I think that you can really try to scout out what's going on, like for example on LinkedIn. In fact, so I'll tell you, the reason I say that is I've been having an opportunity to talk with companies who are saying, we really want to improve our diversity and inclusion. Help us do that. And I say, well, what does your application journey look like? I mean, if I look at an application and okay, so your application's fine, but then if I go to try to discover what this company's like, what I see in these particular cases, what I see is basically a company that looks like it's from the 50s. I mean, I get nothing, hardly any website, hardly anything on LinkedIn, and things like that. So I think that actually using these tools can help, like LinkedIn, et cetera. I also think you can not only use LinkedIn to look at the company, but really the same thing I mentioned about your network is see if anybody in your LinkedIn network is working there or knows somebody who's working there, and try to gather information. Talk to people. You can also read reviews about the different companies on things like Indeed and other places like that. So I think you can use those tools. And then I also think, particularly if you've progressed in the hiring process, in the application process, I think it's fair to maybe ask if there's a couple of other people that you can chat with. I mean, there's typically a slate of people that that are interviewing you. If you make it past that first round of interviews and you maybe even starting to discuss negotiating the next step, I think it's completely fair to try to reach out to a few other people in the organization and just ask, okay, and depending on what your role is, but you might want to get somebody from a resource group, or you might want to get somebody from finance, or you might want to get somebody from operations if you're trying to go in R&D or something like that. But just see if you can maybe talk to a few other people just to try to get a sense for what the company's like. So online tools, not just the website, but doing even a little bit more digging, and then seeing, once, if you're able to make it to the next rounds of interviews, see if you can actually ask for the ability to meet a few other people.
Yeah, that's all great. Thank you so much. And I've heard of people saying that if you're going to work with someone, ask them for references. So people, and I don't know that I would have the guts to do that, but it certainly is, if you really have any questions about the company or that hiring manager, certainly something you can do right now. And, right now there's so many open positions, that's why we're all here, that you're really in a good position. If you don't, now is a great time. So I'd like to thank you so much, Dr. Adams, and I put the link that you're showing up with the QR code into the discussion. And I also put the link for the presentation, and we'll be following up with more ways that you can benefit from Dr. Adams' knowledge and all of her resources. So thank you so much.